Cancora, I too welcome the statement which was made by the government last night, which we've now got about a week after the publication of the Ryan report, and which of course has come following pretty overwhelming public outrage over what was contained in that report. As I understand it, the approach that's now being proposed by the government to deal with this is that the religious orders would make further contributions, that some mechanism would be found to house those contributions, perhaps a trust, which is along the lines that, in fact, I had been suggesting, and thirdly, that there would be a basis by which the public could assess the significance of the contributions made by the religious orders having regard to the assets and the financial position and so on of the different religious orders. Now, I think it's important that this exercise does not become some kind of a repeat of the sweetheart deal that was done in 2002. And therefore, I think we need a bit of clarity, Taoiseach, about what is intended here. First of all, in reply to Deputy Kenny, you have said on 2 occasions that the approach you intend to take is to hear what the religious orders have to say, to hear what the congregations have to say, and in a sense, what they are offering. Is it your intention, or do you have in mind yourself, on behalf of the government, some idea of the quantum of what would be acceptable here? What amount of further contribution do you think is appropriate, or is there a basis for that? You will recall that when the 2002 deal was done, the Department of Finance was recommending that the contributions should be shared on a 50-50 basis. Would that be the kind of level of further contribution that you have in mind, or is it the case that you are going to take whatever is offered? Secondly, with regard to the mechanism that is being proposed, and I note that you did include in your statement that this might be done by way of a trust, which I think would be a good way of doing it. But I also note that some of the congregations seem to be suggesting that perhaps this might be done by way of provision of services, including counselling services. Now, I suspect that the last place that the victims of these awful events would want to go for counselling is back to the orders that inflicted it on them in the first place. And therefore, can you assure us that the means by which these further contributions will be made will be in material terms, that this will be in the form of money or of property or of other assets? And thirdly, can you tell us what exactly is the means by which the public will be able to assess this? How are we to assess what is the level of contribution that's appropriate, and what are the congregations in a position to contribute? Will there be some audit, as Deputy Kenny has asked, and indeed Deputy Burton asked yesterday? Will there be an audit carried out independently of the congregations and of their assets? Is there some means by which that could be done by perhaps the Revenue Commissioners of the Criminal Assets Bureau to assess the level of assets that exist, and also to look at whether or not congregations have been transferring or may have been transferring out assets in anticipation of any request for a further contribution? And finally, Taoiseach, can you give us an assurance that whatever agreement is made, whatever is the outcome of the discussions between the government and the congregations now, that that outcome will be brought back to this House for consideration and approval?
Dr. Gilmore, please.
Well, just a couple of questions arising from that. First of all, the Taoiseach describes the means by which this will be done as additional voluntary contributions by the congregations. What happens if some of the congregations don't make additional voluntary contributions? We have heard to date from, I think it's 2 or maybe 3 out of the 18 congregations. If some of the congregations don't play ball with what the Taoiseach calls the process of engagement, what is the position? Does the government have a position by which it would cause contributions to be made by congregations who are not stepping up to the plate? Secondly, if the additional voluntary contributions are not substantial, what is your, do you have yourself, and perhaps in advance of talking to the congregations, I can perhaps understand that you mightn't want to, divulge your hand on this publicly at this stage. But, I mean, has the government considered what it would consider as a satisfactory level of further contribution to be made? Or are you just in a situation that you'll hear what they have to say, let them make an offer, and, if the offer sounds good enough, maybe accept it? I mean, is this entirely in the hands of the congregations, or does the government have a position as to what the level of contribution would be? And finally, can I ask you again, is it your intention, because it certainly would be the view of the Labour Party that this should happen, that whatever is concluded with the congregations on this occasion, unlike what happened in 2002, should be brought back and reported here to the House and be considered by the House? Because, as you said, there has to be a basis by which the public can assess whether the level of contribution that is being made is appropriate, having regard to the assets of the different institutions. And are you going to have an audit carried out by somebody on the assets and on the ability of the congregations to make a contribution, and the level of contribution which they might be able to make?